What's today?
May 19th.
It's May 19th. It's a beautiful day in Los Angeles, 70 degrees. Today we're going to debate value debate number 2, which is global warming on balance is catastrophic. There was a little parentheses in here. What happened to that? It was in the topic. You left that out?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, well, okay. For the government, Hossein and Yasmin. For the opposition, Mackenzie, don't call her Sarah, and Gayness. No, sorry, I screwed that up. Guyana. Sorry, Guyana. Can you add the rest of the wording to the topic up there, please? Killing me. And the chair will recognize the leader of the government for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length. Here is your timer. You can time yourself too. And I want to compliment you on looking so nice, like a job interview. Thank you for respecting the activity.
You too. You look nice as well.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
Hi everyone. My name is Hussein.
Hi, Hussein.
Okay, so today the resolution that we're going to discuss is global warming on balance is catastrophic, positive versus negative. So I will be representing the leader of the government, and I want to emphasize what the criteria of this debate is. The side that is able to address this criteria most effectively, according to your judgment, should win the debate. The criteria that we've set out is security and quality of life. The debate will be won by the side that's able to most effectively prioritize human life as it relates to global warming. So what I want to stress in this resolution is the fact that we are in a catastrophic state as it relates to the environment. I think a lot of times we hear about whether or not it's caused by humans or its natural effects, and we have this back and forth in the media. But the reality is the catastrophic effects are nearing, and in fact some of them have already arrived, and it definitely requires our diligent attention. So the first thing that I want to point out is that sea levels are rising at a catastrophic rate. Ice caps and glaciers are melting, so do the sea levels rise and put lower coastal societies in danger. In fact, a professor at Queensland University in Australia, John Pandolfi, has said that people living on small islands, such as those found in the Caribbean and Pacific, are particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels, extreme weather, and deteriorating coastal conditions. Climate change also affects entire economies, undermining fisheries, tourism, and other core components of island economies. Millions more people are projected to be at risk from coastal flooding due to sea levels rising, especially in densely populated and low-lying settlements that already face challenges such as hurricanes and tropical storms. You can see why this is such an urgent matter and requires our attention. In addition, devastating drought, flood, storms, and heat waves caused by global warming are basically imminent. According to the IPCC AR4 report, global drought trends are expected to increase in every scenario, including one that shows reduced emissions through the 21st century. So even in the most optimistic case, we still face heavy drought, and it definitely requires our attention. Research ecologist Craig Allen explains that increasing the frequency, duration, and/or severity of drought and heat stress associated with climate change could fundamentally alter the composition, structure, and biogeography of forests in many regions. What this could result in, and this is why it's of particular importance, is tree mortality associated with climate-induced physiological stress and interactions with other climate-mediated processes, such as insect outbreaks and wildfire that directly affect human life and security. Even the skeptical environmentalist Bjorn Lomborg admits that climate change is likely to result in an increased amount of recurrent flooding, affecting an increased 200 million people. 200 million people, that's more than half the population of the United States by the year 2080. And lastly, damaging effects to the poor. Poor countries that cannot react to the effects of global warming are particularly susceptible. If you noticed in the skeptical environmentalist, Lomborg had a habit of sort of saying, we've encountered this before and we're able to react. We've reacted before. The reality is we're in a different climate now, and poorer countries don't have the resources to react. Of particular concern is water scarcities. Many areas source their water from meltwater reserves, stored in glaciers and ice caps, and as these melt, so do their access to water. By 2020, a projected 150 million individuals in Africa are expected to suffer from the effects of water scarcity. Also, what's expected to increase is disease. Paul R. Eichstein, Associate Director of the Center of Health and Global Environment at Harvard Medical School, so he probably knows what he's talking about. In his article, Is Global Warming Harmful to Our Health?, explains that the increasing warm weather is expected, and erratic weather patterns, is expected to drastically increase the spread of malaria. Similarly, we expect an increase in waterborne illness such as cholera. And he's quoted as saying, climate does not necessarily change gradually. The multiple factors that are now destabilizing the global climate system could cause it to jump abruptly out of its current state. Such a sudden, catastrophic change is the ultimate health risk, one that must be avoided at all costs. End quote. Those are his words. So you can really see the urgency of this matter. I think debating it is a useful practice, but really we're in sort of a action now mode, and it definitely requires our attention. So I want to sort of illustrate how the criteria has been satisfied. I've shown that rising sea levels make lowshore areas specifically uninhabitable and have the potential to affect hundreds of millions of lives globally, deteriorating both safety and security, the two things that we laid out in the criteria. Global warming will also result in devastating droughts and erratic weather patterns, damaging individual lives and entire economies directly. This is an obvious threat to safety and security and will be, by all definitions, catastrophic. Poorer nations compose a large portion of the global population, and they appear to be in the most disadvantageous position regarding the damage global warming is inevitably going to cause. Less developed countries will, and are already beginning to, experience devastatingly limited access to water and exposure to disease caused by global warming. So as I leave you in close, I want to leave you with one more quote by Catherine Pierce, who's the Senior Policy Officer on Climate and Environmental Policy Integration with the European Environment Bureau. I want you to pay close attention to the words that she chooses. Unless we take action to reduce emissions now, far worse is yet to come. Condemning millions in the poorest parts of the world to loss of lives, livelihood, and homes. Climate change is no longer just an environmental issue. It's a looming humanitarian catastrophe, threatening ultimately our global security and survival. I now stand open to questions.
Thank you very much. Would you come to the front of the desk for a cross-examination period not to exceed 3 minutes in length? Begin, please.
Okay, Hossein. By your accounts and by your research, when would you say that global warming began?
Look at your audience.
I would say that fluctuations in global climate change have been occurring for centuries, but it's really become of catastrophic and probably urgent attention in the 90s, I'd say.
Why would you attribute it to the 1990s?
Well, I would say probably that's when we began to really ramp up industrialization. From my research, I found that the 90s is really when a lot of people cite the beginning of these practices that humans have adopted that really are unsustainable and ones that require drastic change for us to really avoid the catastrophe that we're headed towards.
Are you talking about industrialization in the United States, or what part of the world are we talking about?
I'm really talking about in really major countries, not so much less developed countries. But really, I think that the thing to pay attention to is, as we can see by the medieval warm period and the little ice age that happened throughout history, we can see that natural effects of global warming have happened all throughout human history. But it's that coupled with the newly found contributing human factors that make our situation particularly unique and devastating.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you, when you woke up this morning, how did you feel?
Probably nervous about this questioning.
Totally understandable. What was your biggest concern on the way to class today?
Probably the melting of ice caps in
Did you fear for your life because of those melting ice caps?
Well, I personally didn't, but I also have the awareness and understanding that UCLA has taught me to not only be concerned for my own safety, but the safety of people all across the globe.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Do you think that the people in this room are in clear and present danger due to global warming?
Probably not, but I do think that the people in this room are in a presence of mind to be concerned for people other than themselves. I don't know if you guys would agree.
Absolutely, but that doesn't really answer the question. Are they in present clear danger?
Are you asking if the 19 people in this room are in present and clear danger because of global warming? I'll say no.
Okay, thank you. Most people attribute the beginning of global warming to the Industrial Revolution. Is that correct? Although you said the 1990s.
I guess I don't fall in that most of the people, but sure.
Okay, that's fine. How long do you think extreme weather has occurred on Earth?
I mean, it's probably fluctuated for centuries, but we're in a particularly unique time, as I mentioned, because of the unique human contribution.
Can you please describe that human contribution?
Well, I mean, I don't really see why that's relevant, considering that it's global warming, regardless of whether or not humans are the ones contributing mainly to it. Our world is in a particular environmental state that can be classified as a catastrophe and requires our attention.
Thank you.
That's time. Thank you so much. The chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition, Mackenzie, for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Mackenzie and I'm here to lead the opposition with my partner Guyana. I want to remind you as we're going through this debate what we're talking about. We defined together, all four of us, the meaning of the word catastrophic is involving or causing sudden great damage or suffering. That is a very strong assertion. Hossein said that global warming on balance is catastrophic, and I disagree because simply there is definitive lack of evidence necessary to substantiate such a strong conclusion. One of the basic tenets of logical reasoning is that premises of an argument have to have strength of greater or equal value to that of the conclusion. Stephen M. Rice, a law professor and a longtime litigator, wrote, "The conclusion is compelled by the premises only when the logical form of the argument requires that the conclusion be inferred from the premises." Well, that's what's happening here. The government is asking you to draw an inference based on their premises and then draw a conclusion. They're saying that their premises are going to compel this conclusion, that global warming on balance is catastrophic. Unfortunately, as Hussein has already pointed out, and as his partner will too, they're going to fall short. This is one of the basic tenets of logical thinking, and the government positions clearly violates that basic tenet. Now, how do they do this? Why am I saying this? Because there's too much uncertainty with what they're saying. Too much evidence in support of the catastrophic notion of global warming predicates itself on projections and hypotheticals, revealing uncertainty and thereby undermining the government's proposition. Andrew Repkin was a journalist for the New York Times for 15 years, and he now works at Case University's Applied Environmental Studies Department. He writes, "It remains a subtle process laden with uncertainty. Even extreme climate anomalies such as decade-long super drought in the West could never be shown to definitively caused by human-driven warming." The IPCC, the United Nations champion for bringing a significant awareness to the issue of global warming, writes with very vague terms that human security may or may not be affected by changes in the climate. May. There may be factors that contribute. There may not be. I also want to talk about the evidence that we might be able to infer from, things that we should be actually talking about. It's worth pointing out that there is evidence that these increases in the Earth's atmosphere could be part of a natural cyclical fluctuation. I say this too because Hussein also brought this up in his questioning. Throughout human history, temperatures have had their moments of great decline and their moments of escalation. Global warming, quote unquote, is nothing new. Rather, it's a reflection of normal, broader trends of global temperature changes. He also brought up violent weather, which is great, because much like global warming, it is also neither catastrophic nor abnormal. Global warming does not lead to violent weather. The storms reported in recent history are simply weather patterns that humankind has had to quote-unquote weather for centuries. Carrie Emanuel is one of the most influential scientists behind the theory that global warming will intensify current hurricane activity. And guess what? He decided to revisit this initial hypothesis. He said that the findings he's found do not lead to such a strong conclusion. A fellow researcher, Gabriel Becky, who is the head of the Climate Variations and Predictability Group at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, agrees with what Carrie Emanuel says, and that said that Emanuel's new work, quote, highlights the great uncertainty that remains in hurricane science. Gabriel Becky also has read that even though Atlantic Sea surface temperatures are currently at a historic high, this does not necessarily mean that they're going to elicit the strongest, most intense hurricanes we've seen in history. I also want to turn to Germany, which recently has been afflicted with many tornadoes. A member of the South German News conducted an interview with the head of the German National Weather News Service. The head of the National German News Service says, tornadoes are not forming more frequently than earlier, we are simply being made more aware of them. The German Weather Service reports on average 20 to 60 tornadoes per year, and those numbers remain unchanged. Finally, the IPCC even said in 2013, quote, there is limited evidence that changes in weather are associated with climate variables. Wow. Whew. Also, Hossein brought up the impoverished world, the developing world, which is great. Developing countries have faced challenges and suffering for much longer, though, than global warming phenomenon took hold. In the 1990s, as he's saying, climate change is not the greatest challenge faced by the developing world today. In fact, it's not the greatest challenge that the world is facing today. Problems of disease, famine, war, civil unrest have been going on in the sub-Saharan Africa for decades. The largest famine to hit Ethiopia killed 1 million people in 1983 and 1985. In 1994, 800,000 people were killed because of ethnic cleansing in Rwanda. Energy consumption was the result recently of continued growth and well-being. I bring this up because the developing world is growing, and that is good. Carbon emissions are higher, and that's okay. Why? Because if we're ever going to have environmental issues brought to the forefront, we need to first address economic development in the developing world. A group of 18 scholars and professors from universities around the world, including Harvard, Cornell, Stanford, all the good ones, issued what they call the Eco-Modernist Manifesto. They call themselves eco-modernists because they're asserting that economic development is a required precondition to preserving the environment. Addressing global poverty and the true catastrophes that these people are facing must be the priority. You see, climate change and other ecological challenges are not the most immediate concerns for the world's people, nor should they be. And this is important because we're talking about the value, and the value that we're arguing here is the safety and security of people around the world. If this is what we value, then shouldn't we be addressing the poverty that's really the root cause of so many issues? The last thing I want to bring up is this issue of extreme discourse. Hossein said time and time again, this is a very urgent issue. There's so many things, this is the time now. We should all be skeptical of extreme discourse, particularly when the evidence shows that there is some uncertainty behind some of the conclusions that he's trying to make. Inducing fear is bad, and if the goal here is for there to be real environmental efforts, then we should approach it with moderate language and a moderate approach in general. The skeptical environmentalist Bjorn Lomborg wrote, quote, it makes us scared and it makes us more likely to spend our resources and attention solving, quote, phantom problems. This is real and this is true, and it should be something that we all think about. I also want to talk about if we really do want to address environmental issues, the better approach would be to calm down a little and really look at what's going on. Elizabeth Tobin is a biological oceanographer and a contributor to the Los Angeles Times, and she wrote, quote, words matter. Scientists and media must avoid hyperbolic language when describing crucial environmental issues. The use of more colorful terms may make for catchier headlines, but the terms can also invite disbelief, just like it's inviting my own disbelief. I want to thank you so much for today, and I'm asking for questioning.
Thank you very much. Will you come to the front for a cross-examination, please? Stand together. You may begin.
Okay, so you mentioned the rhetoric of this conversation. What exactly would it take for the classification catastrophe to be used?
What qualification?
What exactly would it take for us to be justified to use the classification catastrophe as it relates to this environmental issue?
Sure. I appreciate what you're saying. You're bringing up a good point. I'm not sure, and I think what my job here is today is to look at what we do have and the evidence that we do have, and I'm here to say that it's not enough to convince me that the word catastrophic is appropriate.
Okay, I want to bring up a point that kind of raised my eyebrows. You mentioned in Africa history of civil unrest, ethnic cleansing in Rwanda, and other catastrophic events. Mm-hmm. Are you suggesting that these catastrophic events make this catastrophe negligible?
No, negligible is the wrong word.
Okay.
So the answer is no.
Okay, so what are you trying to suggest by citing ethnic cleansing and previous civil unrest in Africa?
My point is that these are catastrophes that are actually happening, that are documented and have been plaguing this part of the world for decades. And I say that because when we're talking about projections, we're talking about hypotheticals, and we're saying that things might happen, the environment may be so bad that we're not going to be able to make it, we should really be addressing issues that are real, that we can confront first. And the information that I cited is that we should confront those first if the things you're saying are true. If the things you're saying are true.
Okay, so this sounds scary. You say fear is bad. Can fear ever be productive?
Sure, absolutely. I also want to make clear that fear is something that I think is very appropriate when we're talking about millions of people dying in Africa. I don't think that's an unjust claim, and I don't think that's based on anything hypothetical. Thanks.
What was the time?
1:45.
1:45?
Oh, 1:15 left. 1:25.
One what?
1:15 left.
1:15 left. Okay. Chair will now recognize the deputy member of the government for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
Hi, my name is Yasmin Slim, and I'd like to thank
Hi,
Professor
Yasmin.
Miller and the class for allowing me to speak on such an important topic. Also, I'd like to note that I'm getting into the stomach flu, so some of my pauses might not always be for dramatic effect, but because I need air.
Good.
Global warming on balance is catastrophic. I'd like you to clap twice if you're still listening. Good. I'm glad you still are, because I know how easy it is to tune out during this debate. I mean, I've been guilty of it too. But today I'm going to explain to you why you shouldn't tune out, why global warming is important, and although I can't speak for Professor Miller, why this topic was important enough to put it at the center of the curriculum for this entire class. Global warming on balance is catastrophic, but let's take a step back and analyze the opposition's argument so far. They would have you believe that global warming on balance is not catastrophic. In 1908, Sorante Arrhenius claimed that the world may hope to enjoy ages with more equable and better climates because of global warming. Arrhenius believed that global warming was a positive thing, and it's this 1908 belief that the opposition would have you believe. A little outdated, don't you think? But nevertheless, let's dig a little deeper into the opposition's points so far. The opposition argued that my team, the government, cannot provide enough definitive evidence to prove the connection between global warming and catastrophe. I disagree. With sources ranging from the American Institute of Physics, professors at Harvard, to futurists, the scientists at MIT, my team is truly presenting a strong and all-encompassing argument. And this is available because global warming is such an overwhelming issue. It affects almost all dimensions of human life, and this is why experts in the field of forestry to economics and even national security have joined in the study. As far as the certainty of these issues, don't be fooled. These studies derive from years of credible research done by respected researchers. Most of these studies use vague terms, and some of these may come up, and these terms may come off as uncertainty, and I completely understand that, but this isn't the case. It is impossible to make solid predictions given the complexity of the global system, the differences from one region to another, and the way human society itself may try to adapt to these changes. Anyone who's made a 5-year plan understands this. It's just impossible to give this definitive answer when really the future is uncertain. But nevertheless, it's crystal clear that climate change is going to bring some serious harm to many, many regions. The opposition also argued that global warming is the norm, not catastrophe, and I strongly disagree because, well, I'm just going to name some of the effects, and you'll let me know if they're normal or not. Dangerous warmth in many regions, unsteady weather changes, alarming sea level rise, stressed ecosystems, significant negative impacts on the health of all living creatures, and then unforeseen impacts. I'll elaborate further on these effects later, but it's pretty obvious that these aren't normal. Finally, opposition would argue that these are exaggerations, that extreme disclosure has negative effects on current and future outlooks on global warming, and that rejecting this definition of catastrophic will lead to better, more appropriate responses. Even Longborg, the author of The Skeptical Environmentalist, which was released in 2001, realized in 2010, and I'll quote from his own words, "We actually only have one option. We all need to start seriously focusing right now on the most effective ways to fix global warming. Like Lomborg, we should update our beliefs. Arrhenius' 1908 belief that global warming is a positive event is simply wrong. Global warming on balance is catastrophic. A 2003 study by Peter Schwartz highlighted the potential of global warming. Mega droughts, famine, widespread rioting will erupt across the world. Abrupt climate change could bring the planet to the edge of anarchy as countries develop nuclear threat to defend and secure dwindling food, water, and energy supplies. Now, although this is global warming in its worst case scenario, it'd be irresponsible to rule it out because it is the potential of global warming. This is what could happen if no one takes action, if no one claps twice when I ask if they're listening. So let's look at the effects of global warming one by one. Dangerous warmth in many regions. This effect will differ regionally because some regions have the resources to fight against it, and many don't. Taking into consideration local climate, ecological systems, logical, economic, social, and political conditions and trends, the IPCC pioneered a report called The Regional Impacts of Climate Change and concluded that Africa was the continent most vulnerable to the impacts of projected change because they're so underdeveloped. And developed nations too would suffer harmful impacts. So, taking into consideration the balanced nature of this topic, I'd like everyone to consider that although maybe here in the United States we have the resources to fight against global warming or at least halt it, many regions don't. Unsteady weather changes. Extreme weather events will become more frequent. A warmer atmosphere would hold more moisture and just exaggerate everything. One leading group in preparation for the 2001 IPCC report projected much more frequent occurrences of severe heat stress conditions in the U.S. cities during summer. Heat waves that now happen only 1% of the time would happen 8 times more frequently. Another group found that a heavy daily precipitation increases by more than 50% in many locations. And a third group found large increases in the severity of drought conditions. These different and well-researched studies reflect the unsteady weather changes that are to come. Sea levels continue to rise, which is something that my partner elaborated on. But if global warming has its way, the average sea level around the world by the end of this century, 2099, could be anywhere from 7 to 23 inches higher than it was in 1990. Rising sea levels can force millions of people who now live along the coastline to abandon their homes. Deaths and disease from flood and evacuation will affect the lowlands. And taking it to the extreme, the last time the planet was just 3 degrees Celsius warmer than it is now, the sea level was at least 6 meters or 20 feet higher. Stressed ecosystems. Once again, this is an issue that developed nations will react to differently than undeveloped nations. An ecosystem is a community of plants, animals, and smaller organisms that feed, produce, and interact in the same area and environment. Those who cannot, many species are going to be forced to migrate, and those who can will face extinction. Negative health impacts on all living creatures. For humans, a study found growing evidence that climate and health relationships pose increasing health risks under future projections of climate change, and the warming trend over recent decades has already contributed to increased morbidity and mortality in many regions for the world. And for animals, this was already highlighted in the ecosystems. And lastly, unforeseen impacts, which I don't have time to go over. But global warming on balance is catastrophic. Lomborg wrote in The Skeptical Environmentalist that if global temperature continues to increase over the coming century, it'll have a series of effects, both positive and negative, though mostly negative. The positives do not weigh out the negatives, and I now stop for questioning.
Thank you so much. Would you come to the front of the podium for cross-examination, please? Stand closer together, please. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so you cite Schwartz in saying abrupt climate change could bring planet to the edge of anarchy, countries developing nuclear war to defend resources, mega droughts, famine. The article says, quote, once temperature rises above some threshold, adverse weather conditions could develop. What do you think this threshold is for human doom predictions?
Can you repeat the last half of that question?
The article says, once temperature rises above some threshold, adverse weather conditions could develop. What do you think the threshold is for these adverse doom and gloom predictions?
Well, I'm unsure, but in that same article, Schwartz does have this disclaimer in the very beginning that says, imagining the unthinkable, and it's even in red text, and he says that mega droughts, famine, rioting. It was all global warming at its worst case scenario, but it was still a possibility. And as I mentioned in my statement, it would just be irresponsible to rule it out as completely impossible.
Okay, well, the study itself says that the scenario is characterized by temperature drops of 5 degrees Fahrenheit over some areas, 4 degrees increases in other areas, persistent drought, and intensified storms. Do you think these things are likely to happen suddenly instead of the gradual increases that the IPCC claims?
Can you repeat the question?
The study says that scenario is characterized by abrupt temperature drops of 5 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees increases in other areas, persistent droughts, and intensified storms. Do you think that these things are likely to happen suddenly instead of the gradual increases that the IPCC claims?
Well, Schwartz did have a pretty research argument, so I would follow along with his. How to answer that question is a little bit tough. But do I think that these changes will come suddenly? No, but they are inevitable and they are coming.
Did you read the part where the authors say, rather than accurately forecast what is likely to happen, our intent is to dramatize the impact climate change could have?
It was to dramatize it, but it wasn't giving you false information. It was giving you just global warming at its worst case scenario, but also global warming and the potential of it, and all of these things are possible. They're not fabricated.
So you think it's a good idea to use dramatized scenarios instead of realistic ones?
I think it's a good idea to give facts, and these were facts. Yeah, I mean, they were facts.
Okay, you say that in the past the planet was 3 degrees warmer and 6 meters higher. Can you tell me when this was?
I can't give you an exact date.
The article says it was 125,000 years ago. Why do you think we can make reasonable assumptions about causation so many years ago?
Well, it was brought up Little Ice Age in the medieval warmth, which was in AD
950 to 1250?
950 to 1250 and 1550. So, I mean, we kind of have a balance in our research and the fact that we do go pretty back. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The chair will now hear the deputy member of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Guyana, and I'll be arguing for the opposition.
Hi, Guyana.
Global warming, on balance, is not catastrophic. The value is welfare of life, and the criteria is the net consequences to safety and well-being. As such, the burden falls on the affirmative to prove without a doubt that global warming imposes overwhelming detriment to life, safety, and welfare. Here's a simple point we can all agree on. An idea which corresponds with reality is true, while an idea which does not correspond with reality is false. The years-old idea that global warming is catastrophic is false because it has failed to become a reality. Despite decades of fear peddling, effects have proven to be minimal. The alarmist predictions used to propel the argument that global warming is catastrophic have just not materialized. The evidence the proposition put forth to support dangerous anthropogenic global warming is highly contested. As my partner has explained, and I will continue to, the current negative effects of warming do not amount to catastrophe, and the proposition cannot possibly prove that they will in the future. Therefore, global warming is not catastrophic. The proposition cites 15-year-old studies to contend that extreme weather alters forests, reduces water and economic resources, and poses a health risk. We disagree because recent science says that there won't be extreme weather. As my partner explained, even scientists who used to support the government's theory have realized their error. The IPCC revoked its previous alarmist claims in their latest assessment report, admitting storms are not increasing or intensifying, sea levels are rising slowly, and gradual increases in temperature won't bring extreme weather in either drought or hurricane activity. Therefore, the threats outlined by the government are implausible. The proposition also assumes the global climate system could jump abruptly out of its current state. This was a quote from them. We disagree. The reality is that the climate system just does not work that way. In fact, we define global warming as a gradual increase in temperatures. Therefore, their entire argument is predicated on a false scenario. Our first contention is that global warming is not catastrophic because the effects are minimal. Alarmist sweeping claims about danger are not the 97% consensus. According to Joseph Blast, the leading member of NIPCC, and PhD and NASA team leader Roy Spencer, in The Myth of the Climate Change, this number, the 97% consensus, is contradicted by more reliable research. In fact, most skeptic scientists disagree on the degree of warming and how the climate system responds to it. Observations of the Earth's past climate trends suggest that global warming does not spread pervasive harm. As my partner has explained, along with Mr. Bjorn Lomborg, statistician and president of the Copenhagen Consensus Center, climate records show fluctuations in temperature, like the medieval warm period, which the IPCC admitted in its latest report was just as warm as it is today in some areas. There are variations, but mankind and the animal kingdom adjusted well, and they will continue to in these similar circumstances in the future. Clearly, these ups and downs are expected. As Lomborg suggested, the global climate is just warming after the recent little ice age. It's supposed to warm and stabilize, which, considering the last 15 years of inactivity, it just might have. Our second contention is that current effects of global warming are not catastrophic. The projected negatives have not happened. Even the IPCC in their fifth assessment report says that for the past 15 years, there's been no significant increase in global temperatures. 40% of the CO2 that man has sent into the atmosphere has been during this time, yet the temperature has stabilized. Clearly, CO2 does not have the anticipated effects. Furthermore, the forecasts are diverting more and more from the real-world observations. Models proven false by observations must be discarded or changed, yet the IPCC has not done this yet. The climate is obviously not acting in the alarming way predicted. Furthermore, current ice melt and sea level rise is gradual, not dramatic. According to the World Meteorological Organization, Antarctic ice extended further than ever recorded this southern winter, confounding the world's most trusted models. 97% of the models predicted Antarctic sea ice would be decreasing over the past 30 years, but the IPCC in their fifth assessment report said that the annual sea extent has been increasing actually by 1.2 to 1.8% in the last 30 years. In their latest assessment report, the NIPCC has cited numerous studies, including one by PhD climatologist Loretti in 2012, demonstrating that sea level rise, in contradiction to past IPCC predictions of acceleration, has been decreasing. Sea level rise is rising like it has for centuries, but it is much more gradual than alarmists anticipated. Our third contention is that there is no definitive proof of future catastrophe. There is a feedback response to warming. The climate system pushes back. Models should have both positive and negative feedback systems. The current climate models include only parts of the climate that are well understood, the primarily positive feedbacks, i.e. the greenhouse gases, which results in climate models primarily positive feedbacks, which results in predictions of catastrophic global warming. But there are missing important negative feedback systems that can result in global cooling. Therefore, the climate sensitivity accepted by the IPCC is too high. It should be lower because negative feedback systems reduce the sensitivity to CO2. In the 2013, the IPCC physical science report, based on a meta-analysis of several studies, concluded about negative forcings estimated by the IPCC. The net global effect of aerosols, cloud feedbacks, and other negative forcings may equal or exceed the warming projected from increasing greenhouse gases. Lastly, there is no evidence of runaway CO2 and temperature in the near future. Recent temperatures have forced the IPCC to reconsider their predictions. Climate sensitivity is low, and uncertainty is growing. Even the IPCC now admits the transient climate response, the amount of warming expected to result from a doubling of CO2 within 100 years, given a rate of CO2 increase of 1 degree per year, is likely in the range of 1 degree to 2.5 degrees Celsius. This estimate falls within the range of natural climate variation over the last 6 million years. Therefore, any such change, should it even happen, is unlikely to be dangerous, let alone catastrophic. Recent evidence points to natural systems as balances to warming. According to National Geographic, studies show that low sunspot activity hasn't been seen since the late 1600s. We're likely to see temperature cooling because of this. Like the little ice age, even small variations in the sun's brightness are more powerful than changes in greenhouse gas contributions. The IPCC admittedly relies on low-confidence models to lend theoretical support. For all these reasons and more, global warming is not catastrophic. I now stand for questioning.
Thank you very much. We come to the front of the podium for cross-examination not to exceed 3 minutes in length. Stand close together, please.
Yeah. Okay, so you stated that the transient climate response, amount of warming expected to result from a doubling of the atmospheric CO2 within 100 years, keeping the rate of CO2 increase 1% per year, is likely to range from 1 degree Celsius to 2.5 degrees Celsius. Just want to know, do you by any chance know what that is in Fahrenheit?
Can you repeat that?
Do you by any chance know what 1 degree Celsius to 2.5 degrees Celsius might be in Fahrenheit?
You mean a change in that? A change in 1 degree Celsius?
Just the standard
Well, that's
yield.
The 1 degree Celsius corresponds to a much different degree in Fahrenheit, if that's what you're asking. But a change in 1 degree Celsius is equivalent to, I believe, 1.5 degrees in Fahrenheit.
33.8. But that's okay.
Say that again.
33.8. Are you
1
aware?
degree is 33.8 degrees in
Are
Fahrenheit.
you aware that it's been popularly argued that 2 degrees Celsius increase from where we are now is the tipping point of global warming?
Out
Repeat
here.
the question?
Are you aware that it's been popularly argued that a 2 degrees Celsius increase from where we are now is popularly argued as the tipping point of global warming?
This argument has been made years ago and it has been revived recently.
You stated in your research that the ups and downs of climate change are normal.
Right.
And you highlighted the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age, which we went over in our questioning as well. Can you agree the times have changed since 1950, from AD 950 and AD 1550?
Yes.
So would you agree that industry and production-wise, we're in a much different place than we were from AD 950 and 1550?
The point is that the IPCC has showed evidence that it was the same amount of warmth at that time that it is now. So despite the CO2 in the air, if the temperature is still the same, the warming that's coming out of it should still be the same.
So would you agree that the emissions being released today are different and more prominent than those in 950 and 1550?
Well, I guess the addition of all the CO2 and the natural warmings are the same as they were back there, so it doesn't
Would
matter
you
if the
agree that
CO2 is
AD
more.
950 and AD 1550 is an adequate sample to reflect mankind today?
No, but that is not my argument.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, what was the time?
2020, 40 seconds left.
2020? Thank you.
220, sorry.
Okay, it's time for refutation. Hopefully we'll see four-step refutation from the leader of the opposition, Mackenzie. Yay.
I want to thank you all so much for listening and taking the time to hear everything that both sides had to say. When we close up this debate, I want you guys to think about three things as we come to an end. The first, I want to remind you of the purpose of this debate. We're talking about global warming on balance is catastrophic. Is it? I don't know. We define catastrophic as inflicting sudden, great damage or suffering. What we're concerned with, the value here, is the safety and security of people in their everyday lives. Is global warming so bad, so detrimental, so capable of inducing suffering that it threatens the safety and lives of human beings? Guyana and I argue that global warming does not threaten the safety and security of everyday life. Why? Because the evidence presented is not strong enough to support such a strong conclusion. Hossein said, erratic weather patterns caused global warming will put health and strain the economic systems of multiple countries. I disagree with this because the statement is not substantiated by clear data. I presented the IPCC 2013 saying, quote, there's limited evidence of changes in extreme weather associated with climate variables. I'm also refuting what he has to say because in Germany they alone amongst many others, thank you Austin, have said that there is no increased connection between global warming and intense weather patterns. The evidence that the government has provided is insufficient. Moreover, the opposition, myself and Guyana, have given you source material, pieces of evidence that not only throw doubt on the evidence presented by the government, but also give you more relevant, more current analysis that is more deeply rooted in logical thinking and critical analysis of the things that are being contended here. Our evidence doesn't linger in the shadows of projections and hypotheticals. We're here to say we don't know. We're here to say that there is enough uncertainty for us to not be able to agree with this proposition presented today. The second thing I want you guys to think about are your own lives. Are you included in present danger right now? Are you suffering because global warming and rising temperatures are inhibiting your ability to thrive? Are you laying in bed awake at night worried about human suffering caused by global warming? Are you yourselves in your comfy plush, down comforted beds worried about the people of the world and their damage and deprivation due to global warming? If you are, I have a great number for a nice therapist, but the truth is that you're not at risk. The people that are have to embrace global warming now. They have to embrace the very things that contribute to supposed global warming, such as carbon emissions. We have to keep things like fossil fuels and coal available to those in developing countries who are actually facing real catastrophes, that are laying in bed awake at night worrying about future generations, because that's what's going to actually ultimately lead to more environmental concerns being raised and addressed properly. They're the ones that are concerned about, they're talking about future generations. These people might not even have future generations to be concerned about. The last thing I want to remind you of is what ultimately means to grant adherence to the government in this debate. It means to be convinced, absolutely, wholeheartedly convinced that global warming, on balance, is catastrophic. The government has proven without a doubt that global warming imposes overwhelming, detrimental suffering and damage to the people of this world. For me, the government has not fulfilled this. The evidence they presented is mixed. There's too much uncertainty looming over their statements. A direct connection between global warming and the safety and security of our lives cannot be made. For this, I am not convinced, because not only have they failed to prove that global warming is sudden, that it's so detrimental to the safety and well-being of people's lives, that it doesn't even rest in logical thinking. I'm not convinced. Are you? Thank you.
Thank you. Time?
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I completely
it's
messed
okay.
up times though.
Oh.
It was my fault. Yeah, I completely.
So
gave
it's
it
exactly
wrong.
about
fine.
3-4 minutes?
Yeah, like 4 minutes.
4 minutes?
No worries.
Sorry, I'm so
No,
sorry.
it's okay. I was like, wow, that went really fast.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, thank you. The chair will now recognize the leader of the government for a 5-minute refutation that hopefully will include the 4 steps of refutation. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just go step by step and review exactly what the opposition has said.
Sorry.
So they say that the effects of global warming are, quote, minimal, but I and countless well-respected credentialed scientists disagree, because the direction that various climate changes are trending towards suggests that effects are not only greater than minimal, but are reaching alarming levels. Droughts are projected to increase even in the best case scenarios, and water scarcity caused by global warming directly make it difficult for poor countries to sustain life. I would call these anything but minimal. Therefore, I believe that the effects of global warming have been incredibly damaging on balance, a catastrophe. They say that there lacks strong evidence linking climate change to catastrophic change in the environment. But I disagree, because the reality of climate change and scientific examination of really anything is that the definitive causal relationships are rarely made, but strong correlative conclusions can guide and influence our actions. The catastrophic effects of global warming, if they are to be addressed, will need our attention long before they become definitively conclusive, and that our state of disaster is absolutely because of climate change. Therefore, it's important for us to recognize the catastrophe we're in as a result of climate change. They say that global warming is nothing to worry about, because projected changes haven't occurred yet. But I disagree, because as Paul Epstein, Harvard professor, explains, climate change effects don't always necessarily happen that gradually. The effects of greenhouse gases can affect climate rather quickly, so predictive models, although the timetables are difficult to predict, requires proactive action. Therefore, we must recognize global warming as a global catastrophe before it's too late for us to thwart its effects. And interestingly, they say that there are catastrophic events in Africa related to civil unrest and political conflict that require our attention before global climate change. But I disagree, because multiple catastrophes can exist at the same time. Unlike Harry Potter and Voldemort, the existence of one catastrophe does not affect the existence of another. Do not be fooled to believe that the classifying of one thing as a catastrophe at all affects the classification of existing and urgent matters. Therefore, global warming joins political unrest, civil unrest, increasing drought, tribal warfare, extreme terrorist organizations, One Direction as the rising global catastrophes that we have to face. They say that they believe that climate change is always gradual, but Paul Epstein, Harvard professor, disagrees, because he is much more credentialed than they or we are. Global warming requires our immediate attention, and if he concludes that they can happen a little more quickly than gradually, then I think that we should pay attention. And lastly, they say that you are not at risk because you lay in your, quote, plush beds, was it? With
In Bel Air.
in Bel Air, Bel Air. And because of that reason, we are not in a state of catastrophe. But I disagree, because I understand that just because my life isn't directly affected by, say, ISIS, doesn't mean that nobody's is. I can recognize that other people's experience may be different than mine, and that can classify as a catastrophe. So for those reasons, I urge you to give this matter particular attention, recognize it as a catastrophe, and stop this political banter, and give it the attention it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. And now it's time for the audience to do their job. And individually, policy chairman, fill out your ballot. Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
May I have your cross-examination papers, please?
Mine is on the back of my
Yeah, if it's there, then fine. Okay, thank you. Oh, your name's not on this. I'll put it on here.
Thank you.
Hang on just a second. Thank you so much.
And could you give me mine back after they wrote notes on it? And I give them their feedback. Sorry, I didn't write it in my file.
You're dreaming.
Mine's right on top though.
Do I have all the ballots? Okay, take your time. I'm starting to count, but just let me get them within the next 2 minutes, please. Okay, take your time. Everyone's valid in? How's that, girl? Okay, one more. Okay.
I forgot to rank them on mine. Can I find it?
Smile for the camera, Jose. You're on candid camera. That's better. Thank you. Okay, are you all ready for the decision? Yes. In a in a 17-7 decision, the decision goes to the government. So let us learn why, starting in the rear.
Hi, my name is Ariella.
Hi, Ariella. That's it.
I voted for the government. I do want to start off by saying that I think everybody did a really good job. It was clear that both of you guys had done your research, and I think one cool thing about the internet is that for every fact you can find on one side, you can find another fact on the other side. So I thought that there was kind of a good banter going on. And the cool thing for me was I didn't decide until kind of like the final moment, because I kept flip-flopping. So like you guys would bring something up and I'd be like, oh, that's like a really good point. And then you guys would put a lot of doubt in my head and be like, is it really catastrophic? And I think pretty much until close to the end, like I was gonna vote for the opposition, and then Hussein, your close, like you closed the deal. That was, I think it was a really, really good closing statement. I think that you managed to make me feel like, oh, this actually is catastrophic, like, and I think that was, I think that was like the strongest thing I had seen. I think that you guys all did a really good job during your cross, like asking questions and trying to get people to fall down your road. And I think that Yasmin, your cross was really, really good, especially when you brought up the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit, and you kind of shocked Guyana a little bit, because I was definitely shocked at that. I think Mackenzie, you're a really strong speaker, and so are you, Guyana. I was just really impressed by it all, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Shodai.
Hi, Shodai.
I voted for the government, and that's mainly because, well, I think overall the debate was really good, and like all of them stuck to like the topic, like global warming on balance is catastrophic. Like they both gave like the positives and the negatives, and like on balance, I thought the positives. So like the government side had like better evidences, and I think Hussein was like really good in like putting like humor in his speech, and like so that really like made me think that you're like really intelligent and like credible. So and the refutation was really good. So that won like my vote for the government side.
Okay, and by the way, that is sometimes how credibility functions persuasively. Is not so much what they say, but how they say it, and their use of humor and their demeanor is credible, and you then go on to believe what they say. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan.
I thought both sides, both leaders spoke very well, but I liked Hussein especially. I liked both Yasmin and Hussein. They took the time to like open their speeches with an introduction, like a proper introduction, and that really got my attention. Like when you did the clap twice, that woke me up. I like that, Hussein, you kept your refutation very textbook. I think the simplicity made it very straightforward. Got your point across stronger. It was just easy to listen to. Yeah, and a good sense of humor too. That's about it.
What was the main thing? You voted opposition,
For,
right?
government.
Government. And what was the main reason you voted for government?
Their speaking ability.
Speaking ability. So it was a performance paradigm. Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Hi, Laura.
And I actually voted for the opposition, contrary to my 3 classmates on my left. And I did that because while I thought both sides did a really great job, I was sitting here and thinking about it, the government did a really good job kind of with all these like value-laden ideas and like, oh, it's very like, it's like we need to worry about it, it's very concerning. And like kind of the opposition's method of tearing that down wasn't necessarily saying that's not important, but kind of more of a factual deconstruction, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Maybe I'm in the fact debate group, so maybe I was thinking more about that. But I just really liked how the opposition pulled from a lot of different perspectives and talked about computer models and then how those are unreliable and we shouldn't stress out because this might not even be happening at all. And I think saying it doesn't exist at all is one way of saying don't put value in it because it doesn't matter. And I don't think that the government had a way to deal with kind of those kind of factual deconstructions, and they just kind of kept saying over and over again, oh, it'll cause droughts, it'll cause floods, which
in the future.
Right, in the future, which is great. And then I think also too, the government did some self-contradicting. I think in the cross-ex, Yasmin said something about it, it's not going to be soon, it's not imminent, and then in the closing statement, Hussein said, yes, it will be imminent, so I think there was some confusion that was happening there, so it just wasn't as clear as I would have liked the government to come across.
Okay, so yours was a decision-making model that was more on the factual level. Good, thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Colleen.
Hi, Colleen.
So I voted for the opposition. I thought everyone did a really good job, and it was clear that you guys did your research. And at first, when Hussein started talking, you're very like charming and appealed to the audience, so like that really helped you. But then at the cross, when Mackenzie was crossing you, she's really like, what's the word? She's very like kind, and your answers made you seem a little arrogant. So like I kind of sided for Mackenzie there. Also, I thought Mackenzie, your questions were really good, and at first, Hussein like took over your questions and was taking him his way and like making the audience laugh. But then I think you made it clear what your point was, and I was like, oh yeah, like I'm not being affected by it, which is kind of selfish on my part, but still. Yeah, so overall, I thought Mackenzie, you did a great job, and you were really poised and like spoke very clearly and really connected with the audience. And I thought Yasmin, you did like a good job getting the audience's attention with like, your humor and stuff. And Hussein, like I had already decided on opposition before your rebuttal, but your rebuttal was great. I thought you took their points and like really just made them seem like what are they even saying? Like obviously it's a catastrophe. So I thought you guys all did a good job, but in the end, I thought opposition was more just organized and more clear about their points.
Okay. Not to put too fine a point on it, but, we like to try to keep an open mind as long as we can, but if it just seems so overwhelming that it was just going that way, then I appreciate your honesty, by the way, that you had made up your mind before Hossein started to speak. So, but, we're trying to give everyone a fair listen, if you know what I mean. I'm not criticizing you, but I'm just saying. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Natasha.
Hi, Natasha.
I voted for the opposition. It was a very tough call, though. I really was muddled on who I wanted to vote for, which team. But overall, you guys did an outstanding job. I loved this debate. Maybe it's just because I'm biased because I'm the leader, but I really enjoyed the fact that you guys personalized this debate so much so, especially you, Mackenzie, bringing up daily life, and you individualized it for each student here. I enjoyed that. I liked the fact that let's clap 2 times, engage the audience. That was awesome. Hussein, I loved the last part of it. You brought up a fallacy of generalization, like ISIS. It's not here, but it's still affecting us. I thought that was wonderful. Guyana, your cross-examination was wonderful. It was on point. I actually didn't think the Fahrenheit thing was necessarily relevant, but I think you handled it very well. Overall, great performance, guys.
One thing I'd add to Natasha's comments is it's good if you can personalize it to the audience in a particular way, make it relevant to the audience. That's a great thing. And I think we do need to remember and give a nice round of applause to all three of our lab leaders who are putting this together and keeping everybody honest. And thank you. I thought this was a well-prepared value debate. Yeah, good. So thank you for that, Natasha. Yes,
Hi
please.
everyone, I'm Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
I'd first like to say that I thought all four debaters did a really good job. Like, I think sometimes in debates it's kind of clear, like, you know, if one person carried the team or not, but I thought all four of you guys really held your own, which is really cool. I ended up siding with the government just because I thought that I really enjoyed your, like, more casual speaking style that, like, showed that you guys knew your stuff, but, like, it was relatable and easy to listen to, especially when this can get kind of, like, monotonous. And I also thought in the cross-examinations you guys did a really good job of not only answering their questions, but not letting them, like, ask you too many questions by saying, but wait, like, this is also what I mean as well. So it just kind of strengthened your argument.
So they weren't dominated by the other side in cross-section. That was significant to you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, man.
Hi, I'm Lexi.
Hi, Lexi.
I ended up siding with the government. I thought this debate was actually really, really interesting to listen to. I found myself like paying attention for the majority of it. Hussein, I thought that your opening speech was like very compelling, and it was all of you were very extemporaneous speakers, which is why I think it was so interesting as well. Yasmin, your speech was great as well. I like how you involved the whole audience because it like helped us pay attention. The reason I think that I ended up siding with the government is because I think that the opposition kind of emphasized the fact that there are other catastrophes. But for me, I saw like the premise of this debate being that global warming itself is a catastrophe, and I think that's how the government like persuaded me.
Okay.
But you all did great.
Thank you. This way.
Hi, I'm Niaz. Hi, I sided with the government. I thought that Hossein was just really eloquent. You really spoke to the audience, like totally just spoke to them. And during the cross-ex, you were pretty confident and you just seemed really credible. And I loved Mackenzie had a lot of passion and showing how global warming isn't catastrophic. Like, you just really spoke it out. And during cross-ex, you really elaborated. Yasmin, I liked how you spoke to the audience and you really engaged them. And Guyana, you spoke really clearly and you like really hit the points. But I just thought the opposition was a bit like more persuasive, and I felt like the government.
Freudian slip.
Wait, I was for the government. Yeah.
More persuasive, okay.
Yeah, and then
on which issues on which issues?
I don't know, just the presentation.
Okay.
And then I thought the opposition focused more on the immediate catastrophic events.
Right.
And I thought it was more important to look in the future.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Chloe.
Hi, Chloe.
Just want to start off saying, good job, guys. I ended up siding with the government. I based it off of the criteria that you guys initially set out, which was focused on prioritizing human security and quality of human life in regards to global warming, and that was something that I think that the government sold more to me, and a lot of that, I think everyone would agree, had to do with a little bit of the presentation. I will say, though, both sides had their strengths, and I think Guyana, I think that was a little bit unfair with the Celsius thing, because I was Googling it, and it's like 1 degree Celsius is 30, but then if you increase it, it's like 30 degrees Celsius to 31, it's not a 30 degree Fahrenheit difference. So I think that was misguiding. But I would say that Hussein, yeah, I was kind of going back and forth, but in the closing statement, you really sold it. I did like your comparison to while it's not directly affecting me, it's affecting other people. I think that you guys' argument could have been stronger if you had used specific examples, like pointing out a specific region where, because there are conflicts over resource scarcity, you could have brought that up, saying that there are wars over water. Something like that could have been interesting. But yeah, I think that in the opposition, you guys were clear to follow, which was nice as well.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. This way.
Hi, Hi, my name is Shazi.
Hi, Shazi.
And I actually sided with the government. I sided with the government because, as Chloe just said, this debate was based on the criteria of value and how human life and everything would be affected and everything. But honestly, my decision was based on presentation as well. I felt like opposition had really great facts, and if this was a debate that was prioritized on facts, I'd gone with opposition. But Hussein and Yasmin, they were a lot more, I don't know, your presentation was a lot more passionate and you kind of attacked, and it felt like you were, I don't know, it felt like you were defending
It felt like you were in what?
it felt like they were defending
Defending.
the human race, which was just biased me towards your value debate. But otherwise, I felt like Hussein was a very good charmer. Your refutation at the very end really hit the nail, sealed the deal for me. Yasmin, the way you kind of took down Guyana's guard was amazing. But then your argument was also really nice to follow. Mackenzie, I like that. I don't know, when I heard your debate, I honestly thought that when I first heard your debate, I was like, oh my god, I'm going to side with opposition, but I kept a clear mind. You were easy to follow, your facts were great, you really made me feel like I could go with your point of view, so I really liked your argument. And Guyana, I thought you really held your ground when Yasmin started to ask you about the Celsius and everything. You held your ground and you answered what you knew, and you were very poised. You didn't fall under pressure. But overall, I'd have to give it to government.
Thank you very much. Very articulate. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Sam.
Hi, Sam.
I ended up voting for the government as well. I think I mostly did this because, kind of similar to everyone, with Mackenzie's first cross, I was like, those were all really solid points. It definitely had me leaning towards the opposition. But then later on, I think someone, I started thinking, someone said, do you wake up thinking about global warming? And no, but I also don't wake up thinking about the problems in Africa, which which may be a bigger issue. And I do see that, but I'm not waking up thinking about that more so. So I felt like it was kind of a moot point. I was I'm actually more aware of global warming. So I'm I try to unplug my phone. That's kind of helpful. So
Your charger, right?
I'm my charger, yeah. So I try to do that, but I don't really sadly do anything to help the African people. And then overall though, very good presentation skills on both sides. Other people have mentioned, I was also really engaged. I thought you guys, I really liked, it was very clear where you got your sources. Hussein pointed out the Harvard professor 10 times. But I knew it was the Harvard professor. And then you guys, I wrote down someone for you guys too. I think the skeptical environment, I don't know. You guys also had very good sources. I was very impressed overall because I like knowing who the sources are coming from, not just the internet. Because as Ariella said, you can find things for both sides. Good job.
Good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Miranda.
Hi, Miranda.
I sided with the government, but I would like to say that I was extremely torn, which shows that this was a very evenly matched debate, and I thought it was really, really, you all had a good balance of pathos, logos, and ethos, which I think is extremely important for a value debate. But the opposition really focused on asking if we were suffering at this exact moment in this exact place, and I think that kind of reduced the problem a little bit too much. So then I felt like the argument from the government was stronger, which is ultimately why I sided with the government.
It's interesting. A lot of people have keyed on that, their adaptation to the audience, and it didn't go over just exactly as they wanted it to. Interesting. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Aubrey.
Hi, Aubrey.
Hi. I granted adherence to the government side. I felt both sides were very strong. Like Chloe said, each side had its strengths, and each one was a little bit weaker in some aspects. But I just felt overall the government's argument was just very well-rounded. I thought you guys had a good presentation with your personal references and just getting the audience really involved both times. And I liked your cross-examination questions, and I felt like it also did catch them a little off guard. And I also liked your responses and your cross-examination questions for the government side were very confident. Mackenzie, I really liked your approach too with your opening statement. I thought it was very personal as well, with the whole like asking like what you think about when you wake up in the morning and stuff. And I really enjoyed your rebuttal. So at the end, it was a little bit hard to choose between the two, but I just ended up granting against it.
Okay. Thank you, Aubrey. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Garrett.
Hi, Garrett.
So I chose government for this debate. I thought they debated as a whole, arguments, logic, presentation. It was really good, and then above all, they were very interesting. I had a good time actually listening to both of you. Hussein, your character, you are very witty and you're very funny. I actually like when Mackenzie was questioning you, she was like, serious questions, and you would respond twice with jokes, and that's think quick on your feet, but it was really good. Lastly, Mackenzie, in your refutation, you brought me over from the side. I was like, oh, I agree with her. Because it's really strong, and you proved your point, which was it's not imminent to us. It's the global warming is not an issue to us in the immediate moment. But he brought it back. He said it may not be immediate to us, but as a whole, it definitely is an issue on the greater scale. So he brought me over. And overall, good job.
Okay, thanks. Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
I sided with the government in this debate. I think, as everyone said, you really can't underestimate the ability to personalize. I think all four of you did a great job of doing that, and that's what made this debate a lot better, a lot more entertaining than some of the others. Ultimately, it was kind of a toss-up. It was difficult, but Hussein, when you did your refutation, you used the 4 steps, you made it simple, and you really just tore down their argument for me. Also, another thing I thought that you did really well was during cross-ex, your first answer, you brought up the natural variation in temperature, which I thought was really smart because you kind of knew that that was going to be something that they were going to bring up as something against your argument, and you brought it up first, which kind of really earned you some points there. Yasmin, great, engaged with the audience. 2-step was really cool. Mackenzie did an excellent job. I thought you spoke really well. I thought you brought really great points, as did you, Guyana, but ultimately Hussein's refutation threw me that way.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Austin.
Hi, Austin.
I ended up giving it to the opposition, actually, because basically what my decision boiled down to was basically the definition of a catastrophe, and then I thought whether or not basically the last whole thing was, if you don't feel it here, can it still be a catastrophe? And if we don't really feel it at all? And I kind of, although I do believe in that, I don't know if I granted it adherence in this case. A few notes. Yeah, the Fahrenheit thing kind of got me annoyed because that's just not, if you're at negative 40 degrees Celsius, it's the same as Fahrenheit, so going up 1 is only going up 1.2. So that was unfair. Also, great speech. Closing speech is fantastic. But I thought your the generalization thing with ISIS, I think that's a false comparison at the same point. So I don't know if I really love that. I did and I wish I'd seen more of the cholera thing you brought up, because you guys bring up this point where we're getting direct effects to us, where you get these diseases, you get cholera outbreaks, you're getting malaria, which are really true. That's a big deal. But then you kind of drop and you say, well, no, you're not going to feel any of it. For cholera, there's a huge outbreak in Haiti right now because 2 UN peacekeepers ended up having cholera and then infected everyone in Haiti now. And so you could have brought it back to us with that. And that's I wish there was more of that. But besides that, I thought it was really good both times, really good speaking, but I just ended up giving it to the opposition in the end.
Good.
Hi, I'm Elliot.
Hi, Elliot.
I sided with the opposition for very similar reasons that you've stated. I think that when it boiled down to it, I was waiting for better evidence from you guys. I think that in the beginning you were really strong, and I did think that your refutation was good, Hussein, but I was just waiting again for that evidence that was really going to capture me and convince me. I did think that the Celsius Fahrenheit thing was a little unfair, and I thought that Mackenzie, you I think it was good that you kind of made it personal and tied into what we're thinking and are we thinking about these things. But I think that you guys did a good job of kind of refuting that, and then in my own mind I refuted it because I was like, well, I feel like a guilty person if I'm not thinking of these things, but it doesn't mean that they don't matter. And I think that you made a really great point at the end, which almost drew me over, that it is a catastrophe and there are other catastrophes. It doesn't mean that one has more worth over the other, but no matter what, this does have worth. I think that all of you guys did really amazing. I think this was my favorite debate so far,
and you guys all had me torn, flip-flopping back and forth. You guys were all really strong speakers. Your cross-examinations were really good. I don't think... Yeah, and I think that... I think that's it.
Good.
Great job.
Thank you, Albert. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Sol. This is honestly like so hard at the end because like if I had based my decision off of performance, you guys would have gotten it. You guys like honestly, I was like, wow, your last rebuttal speech, I was just like, oh, I was like so much wanting to vote for you guys. But then actually it was your speech, Guyana, that I kept going back to, which was like the lack of specific evidence. And they also referenced some outdated evidence. There was the whole, like, I thought that it was really good that you brought up the whole dramatization and how that article was meant to dramatize global warming. So that to me didn't stick as like a piece of, credible evidence. So for me, it really got down to that you brought up. Also, like, I thought that you did a really good job, Guyana, in pointing out all of the things that the IPCC was saying that kind of went against what they were saying, how like trends would have said this, but they actually you used a lot of recent reports, you too, Mackenzie, like you guys used a lot of use of recent reports, recent evidence, so maybe like 5 years ago I would have gone with you guys, but now with the use, like just new data swayed me over to this side, but honestly, you guys did so amazing, like, it was such a good debate.
Thank you, Sol. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Gabby.
Hi, Gabby.
I'm basically going to piggyback off of what Austin, Elliott, and Sol just said because I also went with the opposition. I feel like you guys as a government had a harder job to do because of the way this is worded. Catastrophic. Like, I'm waiting for some really crazy, credible evidence. And so I think with just the way that it's worded, it's hard to sway someone of a lot of things being catastrophic. It just sounds like, I'm really waiting for something huge to bring me over to see things in that light. And because the burden of proof was on you and because of the way it's worded, I think that that's sort of what gave you a disadvantage with me in deciding who won the debate. But overall, I think you guys did an amazing job in that whoever wins the debate, it kind of almost doesn't matter because I feel like you did have a harder job and you guys did so well at presenting what you had and what you had researched. So.
Okay. Thank you, Gabby. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Merle.
Hi, Merle.
I also voted for the opposition. This was really hard. I know everyone's saying this, but I'm not just saying that because I don't have anything else to say because I do. But Hussein, you were a great speaker. I immediately was engaged. I liked your presence a lot. I appreciated it because I feel like sometimes people just kind of get dry and don't really have fun with it, but you were witty and you were fun to watch. Mackenzie, you were also one of my, I think you guys were my top two in this one. I think if you were together, it would have been a power team. But that being said, though, Guyana and Yasmin, you guys were also both very strong. I think I couldn't do this one as a performance debate because I told you both of you resonated with me and you're on different teams, so I was I can't do it off that. So I went off the facts, and I think naturally, although I try to keep an open mind, my debate, I argued economic concerns are more important than environmental concerns. So naturally, I was kind of more on the side already of what you guys were saying, that about you guys got into some of the hypothetical issues that me and my group got into, and then you guys got into some of more of the it's not catastrophic, stuff that's actually happening is catastrophic, and that's stuff that I had researched so much that I couldn't help but have a slight bias. But that said, I tried to go based on the facts, and I just agreed more with what you guys were saying. But I do recognize that you guys had a way harder job because if I couldn't have argued it better, and that's why I was against them in my debate, although they did an amazing job too. So it's just the way it was. But you guys all did amazing. This is my favorite debate.
Yeah, just to add on to what Maral is saying, that's why when you have the burden of proof, you get to speak first and last, as in a courtroom, etc. You get that extra advantage of getting the last speech in because you've got a little extra job to overcome presumption and to really prove that that's true. Yes, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Everyone's pretty much went has the same reasons why I voted. I voted for the government. I'll just say the few things that maybe that wasn't there. I really like how Hossein used comparisons to express his numbers. Like when he said 200 million people, that's over half the U.S. population. I mean, that really gives a big impression over just saying it's 200 million people. I really liked how he had good engagement when he was about to say a point, he would say, "Listen carefully." That really kind of got me like, oh, okay, I gotta listen to this. Okay. And the cross-sex, I thought he did a good job of taking her questions and explaining himself further. Yasmin, I really like sing with you, like listen, and like you say like engage, imagine yourself, picture yourself. I thought that was really engaging for the audience. Mackenzie, you're good at saying, I think for everything, like every day comparing, that'll make your information better to understand for the audience. Guyana, I like how you said these guys are going off on exaggerated facts and stuff. But ultimately, like when you said people, we wake up and you don't experience any other stuff. I'm saying just took it back and said, well, just because we don't experience it doesn't mean it's not.
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Jasmine. Excuse the redundancy, it like comes in speaking last, but you guys, like everybody said, you guys all did amazing presentations, and I was actually interested, like, I mean, everybody else I was always interested too, but like I was always really interested when all of you guys spoke because you all brought your own like character to the front. And so I like everybody else was like really back and forth with like who I wanted to side with. And I think ultimately it fell on, even though this isn't like a like factor necessarily in the value debate, because I was so flip-flopped, I think like the charisma in the opposition's group was very like swaying, and like, you know, it brought me over to the opposition side since I couldn't decide. Because I felt that their arguments were a little bit more memorable in the end because they added like the bits of humor or emphasis in their tonality. It was just what I could think of when I was voting, like after all the speeches had been given. So I think that the presentation charisma, like everybody said, pushed them over in a debate where it was very
close.
equal. Yeah.
Okay. And last but not least, yeah.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie.
I think if you guys just kept going back and forth, I would have flip-flopped every time, because I did that. I was going opposition. And then the government had the chance to sway me, and I never thought that I would go, like, allow content to be my, like, secondary judgment, because content-wise, I was completely sided with opposition.